Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling. The Dementor. I'm going to go and ask the driver what's going on, came Hermione's voice. Harry felt her past him, heard the door slide open again, and there a thud and two loud squeals of pain. Who's that? Who's that? Ginny? Hermione? What are you doing? I was looking for Ron. Come in and sit down. Not here, said Harry hurriedly. I'm here. Ouch, said Neville. Quiet, said a hoarse Rose suddenly. Professor Lupin appeared to have woken up at last. Harry could hear movements in his corner. None of them spoke. There was a soft crackling noise in the shivering light-filled compartment. Professor Lupin appeared to be holding a handful of flames. They illuminated his tired gray face, but his eyes looked alert and weary. Stay where you are, he said in the same hoarse voice as he got up slowly to his feet with his handful of fire held out in front of him. But the door slid slowly open before Lupin could reach it. Standing in the doorway, illuminated by the shivering flames in Lupin's hand, was a cloaked figure that towered to the ceiling. Its face was completely hidden beneath his hood. Harry's eyes darted downwards, and what he saw made him stomach contact. There was a hand protruding the cloak, and it was glistening grayish, slimy looking and scabbard, like some dead that had decayed in water. It was visible only for a split second, as though the creature beneath the cloak sent Harry a gaze. The hand suddenly was withdrawn into the folds of the black material, and the thing beneath the hood, whenever it was, drew a long, slow, rattling breath, as though it was trying to lock something more than air from its surroundings. An intense cold swept over them all. Harry felt his own breath catch into his chest. The cold went deeper than his skin. It was inside his chest. It was inside his very heart. Harry's eyes rolled up into his head. He couldn't see. He was round and cold. There was a rushing in his ears as though of water. He was being dragged downwards, the roaring, growling water. And then, from far away, he heard screaming, terrible, terrified, pleading screams. He wanted to help whoever it was. He tried to move his arms, but couldn't. A thick white fog was swirling around him, inside him. Harry, are you all right? Someone was slapping his face. What? He already opened his eyes. There were lanterns about him, and the floor was shaking. The Hogwarts Express was moving again, and the light has come back on. He seemed to have slid out of his seat onto the floor. Ron and Hermione were kneeling next to him, and about them they could see Neville and Professor Lupin watching. Harry felt very sick. When he put up his hands to push his glasses back on, he felt cold sweat on his face. Ron and Hermione heaved him back onto his seat. Are you okay? Ron asked nervously. Yeah, said Harry, looking quickly towards the door. The hooded creature had vanished. What happened? Where's that thing? Who screamed? No one screamed, said Ron, more nervously still. Harry looked around the bright compartment. Ginny and Neville looked back at him, both very pale. But I heard screaming. A loud snap made them all jump. Professor Lupin was breaking an enormous slab of chocolate into pieces. Here, he said to Harry, handing him a particularly large piece. Eat it. It'll help. Harry took the chocolate but didn't eat it. What was that thing? He asked Lupin. A Dementor, said Lupin, who was one of giving chocolate to everyone else. One of the Dementors of Azkaban. Harry stared at him. Professor Lupin crumpled up the empty chocolate waffle and put it in his pocket. Eat, he repeated. It will help. I need to speak to the driver. Excuse me. He strolled past Harry and disappeared into the corridor. Are you sure you're okay, Harry? Said Hermione, watching Harry anxiously. I don't get it. What happened? Said Harry, wiping more sweat off his face. Well, that thing, the Dementor, stood there and looked around. I think it did. I couldn't see its face. And I thought you were having a fit or something, said Ron, still looking scared. You went sort of rigid and fell off your seat and started twitching. And Professor Lupin stepped over you and walked towards the Dementor and pulled out his wand, said Hermione. And he said, none of us is hiding serious black under our cloaks. Go. But the Dementor didn't move. So Lupin muttered something, and a slivery thing shot out of his wand at it, and it turned round and sort of glided away. It was horrible, said Neville, in a higher voice than usual. Did you feel how good it went when he came in? I felt weird, said Ron, shifting his shoulders comfortably, like I'll never be cheerful again. Ginny, who was huddled into a corner looking nearly as bad as Harry felt, gave a small sob. Hermione went over her and put a comforting arm around her. But didn't any of you fall off your seats? Said Harry awkwardly. No, said Ron, looking anxiously at Harry again. Ginny was shaking like mad, though. Harry didn't understand. He felt weak and shivery, as though he was recovering from a bad bout of flu. He also felt the beginning strain. Why had it gone to pieces like that when no one else had? Professor Lupin had come back. He paused as he entered, looking around and said with a small smile, I haven't poisoned that chocolate, you know. Harry took a bite and to his great surprise felt warm thread suddenly to the tips of his fingers and toes. We'll be at Hogwarts in 10 minutes, said Professor Lupin. Are you all right, Harry? Harry didn't ask how Professor Lupin knew his name. Fine, he muttered, embarrassed. They didn't talk much during the remainder of the journey. At long last, the train stopped at Hogsmeade Station, and there was a great scramble to get out. Owls hooted, cats meowed, and Neville's pet cloaked it suddenly from under his hat. It was freezing on the tiny platform. The rain was driving out in icy sheets. First years get this way, called a familiar voice. Harry, Ron, and Hermione turned and saw a gigantic outline of Hagrid at the other end of the platform, beckoning the terrified-looking students forward to the traditional journey across the lake. All right, you three, as Hagrid yelled over the heads of the crowd. They waved at him, but had no chance to speak to him because the mass of people around them was shouting them away along the platform. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed the rest of the school out on the rough mud track, where at least 100 stagecoaches awaited the remaining students, each built, Harry could assume, by an invisible horse, because when they climbed inside one and shut the door, the coach set all off by himself, bumping its way in procession. The coach smelled faintly of mold and straw. Harry felt better since the chocolate, but still weak. Ron and Hermione kept looking at him sideways, as though frightened he might collapse again. As the carriage trotted towards the pair of magnificent wrought iron gates, flanked with stone columns topped with ginger boars, Harry saw 2 more towering, hooded Dementors standing guard on either side. A wave of cold sickness threatened to engulf the gang. He leaned back into the trompe seat and closed his eyes until he had passed through the gates. The carriage picked up speed on one long, flopping drive to the castle. Hermione was leaning out of the tiny window, watching the many starters and tours draw nearer. At last, the carriage swayed to a halt, and Hermione and Ron got out. As Harry stepped down, a drawling and delighted voice sounded in his ear. You fainted, Potter. Is Longbottom telling the truth? You actually fainted. Malfoy elbowed past Hermione to block Harry's way up and stood on the steps to the castle. His face was gleeful and his eyes pale, glinted maliciously. Show off, Malfoy, said Ron, whose jaw was clenched. Did you faint as well, Weasley? Said Malfoy loudly. Did this carry old Dementor fainted you too, Weasley? Is there a problem? Said a male voice. Professor Lupin was just got out of the next carriage. Malfoy gave Professor Lupin an insolent stare, which took in the pictures of his robes and the dial in his toothcase. With a tiny hint of sarcasm in his voice, he said, Oh no, Professor. Then he smirked at Harry and Crabbe and Goyle and led them up the steps into the castle. Hermione prodded Ron in the back to make him hurry, and the 3 of them joined the crowd swarming up the steps, through the gigantic oak front doors, and into the cavernous entrance hall. It was lit with flaming torches and housed a magnificent marble staircase which led to the upper floors. The door into the great hall stood open at the right. Harry followed the crowd towards it, but had barely glimpsed the enchanted ceiling, which was black and cloudy tonight. Then it was called, Potter, Granger, I want to see you both. Harry and Hermione turned around in surprise. Professor McGonagall, Transfiguration teacher and head of Gryffindor House, was calling over the heads of the crowd. Then she was a stern-looking witch who wore their hair in a tight bun. Her sharp eyes were framed with scarab spectacles. Harry fought his way over to her with a feeling of foreboding. Professor McGonagall had a way of making him feel he must have done something wrong. There's no need to look so worried. I just want a word in my office. She looked at them. Move along there, Weasley. Ron started along as Professor McGonagall ushered Harry and Hermione away from the chatting crowd. He accompanied her across the cancer hall, marble staircase, and a long corridor. When they were in her office, a small room with a large welcoming fire, Professor McGonagall mentioned Harry and Hermione to sit down. They settled themselves behind her desk and said abruptly, Professor Lupin sent an owl ahead to say that you were taken ill on the rain, Potter. Before Harry could reply, there was a soft knock on the door, and Madame Pomfrey, the matron, came bustling in. Harry felt himself going red in the face. It was bad enough that he'd passed out or wherever he had gone, without anyone making all his fuss. I'm fine, he said. I don't need anything. Oh, it's you, is it? Said Madame Pomfrey, growing this and then he now to stare closely at him. I suppose you've been doing something dangerous again. It was a Dementor, Poppy, said Professor McGonagall. Then he changed a dark look and Madame Pomfrey chuckled disapprovingly. Sending Dementors around school, she muttered, pushing Harry's hair back, and feeling his forehead. He won't be the first one who collapses. Yes, he's all clammy. Terrible things they are, and the effect they have on people who are already delicate. I'm not delicate, said Harry closely. Of course you're not, said Madame Pomfrey absent-mindedly, now taking his pills. What does he need? Said Professor McGonagall crisply. Bed rest? Should he perhaps spend tonight in the hospital wing? I'm fine, said Harry, jumping up. The idea of what Draco Malfoy would say if he had to go to the hospital wing was torture. Well, he should have some chocolate at the very least, said Madame Pomfrey, who was now trying to peer into Harry's eyes. I already had some, said Harry. Professor Lupin gave me some. He gave it out to all of us. Did he now? Said Madame Pomfrey approvingly. So we finally got a defense against the dark arts teacher who knows his remedies. Are you sure you feel all right, Potter? Said Professor McGonagall sharply. Yes, said Harry. Very well. Kindly was outside while I have a quick word with Miss Granger about her timetable, when he can go outside to the feast together. Harry went back into the corridor with Madame Pomfrey, who left for the hospital wing, muttering to herself. He only had to wait a few minutes. Then Hermione emerged looking very happy about something, followed by Professor McGonagall, and the three of them made their way back down the marble staircase to the great hall. It was a sea of pointed black hats. Each of these long house tables was lined with students, their faces glimmering by the light of thousands of candles, which were floating over the tables in mid-air. Professor Flitwick, who was a tiny little wizard with a shock of white hair, was carrying an ancient hat and three-legged stool out of the hall. Oh, said Hermione softly, we missed the sorting. The students at Hogwarts were sorted into houses between on the sorting hat, which shouted out of the house they were best suited to, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, or Slytherin. Professor McGonagall strode off the hose to her empty seat at the staff table direction as quietly as possible towards the Gryffindor table. People looked around at them as they passed along the back of the hall, and a few of them pointed at Harry. Had the story of him collapsing in front of the Dementor traveled that fast? He and Hermione sat down on either side of Ron, who had saved them seats. What was all that about? He muttered to Harry. Harry started to explain in a whisper, but at that moment the headmaster stood up to speak as he broke up. Professor Dumbledore, though very old, always gave an impression of great energy. He had several feet long of silver hair and beard, half-moon spectacles, and extremely crooked nose. He was often expressed as to why Harry respected him. He couldn't help trusting Albus Dumbledore, and as Harry watched him beaming around the students, he felt really calm for the first time since the Dementor hadn't entered the train compartment. Welcome, said Dumbledore, the candlelight shimmering on his beard. Welcome to another year at Hogwarts. I have a few things to say to you all, and as one of them is very serious, I think it best to get it out of the way before you can become befooled by our excellent feast. Dumbledore cleared his throat and continued. As you still will be aware, after the surge of the Hogwarts Express, our school is presently playing host to some of the Dementors of Azkaban, who are here to the Ministry of Magic business. He paused, and Harry remembered what Mr. Weasley said about Dumbledore not being happy with the Dementors guarding the school. They are stationed at every entrance to the grounds, said Dumbledore continued. And while they are with us, I must make it plain that nobody is to leave the school without permission. Dementors are not to be fooled by tricks or disguises, or even invisibility cloaks, he added blankly, and Harry and Ron glanced at each other. It is not in the nature of Dementor to understand pleading or excuses. I therefore warn each and every one of you to give them no reason to harm you. I look to the prefects and our new head boy and girl to make sure that no student runs full of the Dementors. Percy, who was sitting a few things along from Harry, puffed his chest again and started around impressively. Dumbledore paused again. He looked very seriously around the hall, and nobody moved or made a sound. On a happier note, he continued, I am pleased to welcome two new teachers to our ranks this year. Firstly, Professor Lupin, who had kindly enlisted to fill the post of defense against the dark arts teacher. There was some scattered, rather enthusiastic applause. All who has been in the compartment of the train with Professor Lupin clapped hard. Harry among them, Professor Lupin looked particularly shabbily next to all the teachers in their best robes. Look at Snape, Ron hissed in Harry's ear. Professor Snape, the potion master, was staring along the staff table at Professor Lupin. It was common knowledge that Snape wanted the defense against the dark arts job, but even Harry, who hated Snape, was startled at the expression twisted in his thin, sallow face. It was beyond anger. It was loathing. Harry knew that expression only too well. It was the look of Snape wore every time he set the eyes on Harry. As to our second new appointment, Dumbledore continued, as the lukewarm applause for Professor Lupin died away. Well, I am sorry to tell that Professor Kettleburn, our Care of Magical Creatures teacher, retired at the end of last year in order to enjoy more time with his remaining limbs. However, I am delighted to say that Rubeus Hagrid, who has agreed to take on his teaching job in addition to his gamekeeping duties. Everyone in Hermione stared at each other stunned. Then they joined in with the applause, which was tumultuous at the Gryffindor table in particular. Harry leaned forward to see Hagrid, who was ruby red in the face, and steadied down his enormous hands with wide grin hinting the table with his black beard. "We should have known!" Ron roared, pounding the table. "Who else would have just sat as a biting book?" Harry, Ron, and Hermione were the last to stop clapping. As Professor Dumbledore started speaking again, he saw that Hagrid was wiping his eyes off the table. "Only thing that's everything worth importance," said Dumbledore. "Let the feast begin." The golden plates and goblets before them filled suddenly with food and drink. Harry, suddenly ravenous, helped himself to everything he could reach and began to eat. It was a delicious feast. The hall echoed with talk, laughter, and the clatter of knives and forks. Harry, Ron, and Hermione, however, were eager for it to finish so that they could talk to Hagrid. They knew how much being made a teacher would mean to him. Hagrid wasn't fully qualified to visit. He had been expelled from Hogwarts in his third year for a crime he had not committed. It had been Harry, Ron, and Hermione who had cleared Hagrid's name last year. At long last, when the last morsels of popping tart had melted from the golden plates, Dumbledore gave the word that it was time for them to all go to bed, and they got the chance. "Congratulations, Hagrid!" Hermione squealed as they reached the teacher's table. "All done to you three," said Hagrid, wiping his shining face of his napkin as he looked up at them. "Can't believe it, great man Dumbledore. Came straight down to me if they had a Professor Kettleburn had said he's had enough. It's what I always wanted." Overcome with emotion, he buried his face in his napkin, and Professor McGonagall shooed them away. Harry, Ron, and Hermione joined the Gryffindors steaming up the marble staircase, and very tight now, along more the corridors, up and more stairs to the hidden entrance to Gryffindor Tower. A large portrait of a fat lady in pink dress asked them, "Password? Coming through," Percy called from behind the crowd. "The new password is Fortuna Major." "Oh no," said Neville Longbottom sadly. He's always had trouble remembering the passwords. Through the portrait hole and across the common room, the girls and boys divided down towards their separate staircases. Harry climbed the spiral stairs with no thought in his head except how glad he was to be back. They reached their familiar circular dormitory with its 5 four-poster beds, and Harry, looking around, felt he was at home at last.